Welcome back to Woodcraft716.com. I'm Mike Weibel, and on this channel we build awesome projects with inexpensive tools. If you're new to woodworking, you can build this real easy. I put a small material list in the description below. So between the material list and the video, you should have no problem building this. And it looks awesome. I also put a couple links to the tools I used during this build in the description below. If you're in the market for them, might want to check those out. And with that, let's create and inspire together. The first thing we're going to do is start cutting the legs at 16.5 inches. Our bench is going to be 18 inches tall, minus 1.5 inches for the top, gives us 16.5 inches. We need 6 legs. We're just going to go ahead and cut them on the miter saw. So after I cut the first piece, I just lay it on top of the board, even up the ends, bump it up against the blade, slide that one back just a little bit, and make a cut. That way all 6 pieces will be exactly the same size. Now that our legs are cut, we need 3 pieces at 11 inches for the top dividers between the legs. We're just going to follow the same procedure. We're going to line up the ends, bump it up against the blade, slide the top back just a little bit, and cut that piece. And there we have it, 3 pieces at 11 inches. The bottom I need is 43 by 11. So I just have this 2 by 12. I'm going to cut it a little long, so when I take it over to the table saw and true up the edges, I'll be able to come back and square up the ends. Moving on to the top, our top is going to be 46 by 16. So we're going to go ahead and cut this 8-foot 2 by 10 in half and leave it long so we can trim it up after it's trued up, pocket holed, and screwed together. Here we are at the table saw. I'm using this piece of plywood because my level falls right into the track on the deck of my table saw. Running them through, we're just truing up one edge of the 2x4s. Then we're just going to switch over, get rid of the piece of plywood, and set our fence to 3 inches. As you can see, the push block we made in a previous video is really working out well. I'll put a link above to a video where we can make this really cheap and easy. And just like that, these are all done for now. Now we're just going to follow the same procedure and do the same thing to the bottom. We're just going to true up one edge, flip it over, lose the piece of plywood, and cut it at 11 inches. And the bottom piece is done for now. Our bench top is going to be 16 inches. We're going to need 2 pieces 8 inches wide. We're just going to go ahead and use our straight edge, true up one side of both pieces, flip them over, cut them to 8 inches, and we'll be all set. Next thing we're going to move on to is pocket holes. I'm going to use the Kreg 720, and since our top is only 2 pieces, I only have to put pocket holes in 1 piece. While this is all set up, we're going to go ahead and put the pocket holes in our top cross members. Just like that. The last thing we need pocket holes is in the bottom piece. We need pocket holes on each end and pocket holes in the middle. That's it. And there you go. I think we're done with the pocket holes. Great. Now that we have our pocket holes in it, we're just going to put some glue on the top, clamp it, and pocket hole screw it together. We'll just go ahead and put this off to the side, let it dry, and then it'll be ready for sanding. And now it's time to glue, clamp, and pocket hole screw these top legs together. And just like that, we'll do the same thing to the other 2. Okay, so we have our bench flipped over, and this is the bottom piece that we're going to use as the support. I need to pocket hole it from the bottom, but I want to make sure that the bench sits level. So I have some spacers in here that we're going to use, and I'm just going to glue it and clamp it and then flip it over and pocket hole screw it. Being careful to make sure that the legs are square and line up with the end of the leg. And now we'll do the same thing to the middle. Now it's time to hit the top with a belt sander. We're just going to work it over, making sure all the seams come out, both sides, make it really smooth, and then we'll hit it with a round over. So I've just gone ahead and clamped my straight edge at 44.5, which is 1.5 inches for the guide on the circular saw. And I'm just cutting this off to make our bench top 46 inches long. Just like that. Now we're going to hit the top with the 1/8 inch round over, both sides, top and bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and hit it with the random orbital sander. So I'm just using 80 grit sandpaper. We'll take it up to 120. We're going to hit both sides, making sure to hit the edges real good. Flip it over, make sure the corners are nice, and go ahead and sand this thing up. It's going to be super smooth. Now that our tabletop is sanded, routed, and put off to the side, we're going to go ahead and put our little 1/4 inch grooves in with our router for the tabletop fasteners. I'm going to go around and router 8 little grooves around the insides of these pieces, hitting both sides of the middle and the insides of the ends. The next thing we're going to move on to is sanding the inside of the ends, just so that when we put our X's in there, we won't have to try to sand around those tight spots. So our ends are all sanded now, and I just went ahead and cut some more 3-inch wide 2x4s. So I'm just going to go ahead and clamp it on there, mark it from the inside, take it to the miter saw, and nibble it down until it fits in there just right. Now that the first piece is fitting in there pretty good, I just went ahead and clamped it on the outside. We're going to mark it in 4 spots, one at the bottom and top, and one on the sides of each middle piece. Then we'll take it over to the miter saw, cut them down to size until they fit in there perfect. And just like that, after a few trips back and forth to the miter saw, we got this thing in there and it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some of these 2.5 inch trim screws. They got a real little head on them, and we're just going to bury it deep in there so you won't even see it, and really hold these X's into place. We're going to glue them and screw them, and these X's will really be held into place good. Won't have to worry about them moving around. Now we're going to start sanding this thing. We're going to sand the insides, the tops, the legs. We're going to sand this whole thing. We're going to sand the shelf, the insides of the X's, the outsides of the X's. We're going to cover this whole thing top to bottom, and it's going to be nice. The last thing we want to do before we paint this is put in these adjustable feet that I have. It's just a threaded rod with a spiked receiver. We countersunk a hole to fit the spiked rod so it'll sit flush, and then we drilled a hole to receive it so we can pound this in and then screw our adjustable feet in. Sometimes I'll put just a dab of super glue around it so that the tip never comes out. Then it's just a matter of putting it in there and sinking it down. And just like that, we have adjustable feet. Okay guys, now that this is all set, we're just gonna take a minute and clean up the shop, vacuum up all the dust and whatever we have laying around, put away some tools so that we can get on to the staining process. To start the staining process, we're just going to go ahead and use some of this Minwax pre-stain conditioners. If you ever watched any of my other videos, I tend to use this, especially on pine. So we're just going to use it on the tabletop because the bench itself is going to get painted. So we're just going to apply it liberally with a rag and then let it dry for about a half an hour and wipe off anything that's left. And just like that, our pre-stain conditioner is on. Now we're going to go ahead and apply the stain. We're going to start on the bottom, fill the pocket holes with a Q-tip, and wipe on our stain. I'm just using an Minwax espresso stain. So we're going to start at the pocket holes. We're going to get it good and covered. Then we're going to do the whole bottom and get that all situated. Then we'll flip it over, doing the top and the sides. And just like that, we'll let this dry. I think it's looking pretty good. All right, while the top is drying, we're going to go ahead and put a coat of primer, Interior Kills Primer. This is an interior bench, and we're just going to put some primer on it. We're going to cover the whole thing, paying close attention, make sure we get those knots covered up real good. We don't want that coming through the white. All right, our top's dried overnight. It sure is looking good. If you've seen any of my other videos, I tend to use this polyacrylic. It goes on kind of like a milky color, but it dries really clear. And once we get a couple coats on it and put our paste wax on it, this thing will be nice. It only takes about 40 minutes to dry, so we'll put another coat on after this dries and we sand it in between. While the polyacrylic's drying on the top and our primer's already dry on the base, we're going to go ahead and put a few coats of white spray paint on this. Really make it a bright white so it'll stand out nice. Now that we have about 6 coats of polyacrylic on this thing, sanded lightly in between, we're going to go ahead and apply our Johnson's paste wax with some 4/0 steel wool. And we're going to give it that furniture finish that we're always looking for. This thing will be smooth. I just apply the Johnson's paste wax with the steel wool. I always try to go with the grain as much as possible and then wipe it off and buff it to a super smooth finish. Okay, this one's all done. It's got 3 coats of the Johnson's paste wax on it. It is super smooth. We're just going to put this off to the side while we focus on putting the paste wax on the base. Now we're just going to go ahead and apply our Johnson's paste wax to the base of this bench. We're going to cover it all and make it really nice and smooth. Awesome. We got our bench top flipped over, sitting on the nice smooth bench top we made. It's spaced out evenly. I'm just going to go ahead and put the tabletop fasteners on this bench. If you're not familiar with a tabletop fastener, it's just a Z-clip that you put into the grooves we made earlier with the router, and you attach them to the bench top with a screw. It really holds it secure, and it allows for some movement with some moisture and humidity. We'll put these in, put our adjustable feet in, flip it over, and this thing will be done. And just like that, this thing is done. Man, it is really smooth. We got our adjustable feet. The paste wax on there is awesome. This thing is great. I'm sure the customer is going to like this one. And if you like these kind of farmhouse builds, I'll put a card here at the end that'll take you to a playlist of really awesome farmhouse builds. And I know you can make those. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, do all the social media things that really help these small channels out. And remember to always create and inspire. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.